Welcome everybody. This is the Slido Masterclass on the art of meeting facilitation. And we are excited to have you today and to talk about how you can elevate your meetings with a few simple steps before, during, and after a meeting. My name is Sabine. I am the webinar and online events manager here at Slido, and I'm joined today by two fantastic colleagues of mine. Number one would be Zsofia, who is in the events team as well. Hi, Zsofia.
Hi, everyone.
And then number two is our gentleman and tech question expert from customer education. Hi, Jacob.
What a great introduction. Hi. Thanks for coming, everyone. I am a gentleman, yes.
Great. Okay, so Jacob will give us a few Slido tips throughout the presentation and also be there for us during the Q&A at the end. And we are going to cover a lot of points today about how you can make your meeting better. But to be very honest, we are just a few brains over here, and we can't possibly anticipate everything that you would like to cover. So we are curious, what would you actually like to improve in your online meeting? So what is the reason, essentially, why you are in this webinar today? And for that, we have prepared yet another Slido poll. As you can see, you can either go to slido.com and type in the event code facilitation, which will lead you to this poll, or you can scan the QR code with your phone and participate in the poll that way. And we have already a few things coming up. So number one, engagement, definitely. Unengaging meetings are a killer. And involvement, which I think has also something to do with engagement. Great. Personal connection. Peer-to-peer learning. This is great. Smooth meeting. Oh yeah, we are going to cover a lot of tips that are going to make your meeting so much smoother. Get shy voices into the conversation. That's really important. Speaking up is not for everybody. Absolutely. Especially when you don't know the people in some cases. Efficiency, inclusion, retaining information. That's a very good point. Jacob, what do you say? Is there anything in here that is surprising for you?
Not getting nervous is a good one, I think. Like maybe, would that refer to, I wonder, like someone who's maybe running a meeting or facilitating a meeting, but is nervous about the whole setup? And I think that's a very interesting one. And I wonder, yeah, I think Slido could be helpful with that. But yeah, those are super interesting.
Definitely. Reduce multitasking on participants. This is a great point we are actually going to touch on. Yes. Thank you so much. And engagement is still in the lead. Fantastic. So I can definitely tell you that we are going to cover quite a few of those points during the presentation. And for everything else, please make sure to go into the Slido event and let us know your questions there so we can tackle them later on in the Q&A, which you can already see here on the agenda. So right now we're still in the introduction part. We are going to have a few preliminary remarks on facilitation. And then we will go into the content. So we will cover our personal must-haves or must-dos before, during, and after a meeting. And we will give you some very tangible, practical Slido tips. All right. Just as a reminder, please join the conversation in Slido. And if there are any tech issues, if our audio is breaking up or there is something wrong with the video or Zoom is making a mess, please let us know in Zoom chat and our colleagues will take care of you. And last but not least, this is something that we always do. We always record the webinar and we always make sure that there's a follow-up email, which is going to go out at the beginning of next week. So you don't need to take any notes. Nothing is going to get past you and you are automatically signed up for this email. So don't worry about it. You will definitely get it. And the recording and the slides are going to be there. Great. Now, when we talk about meetings, like meeting facilitation, first, we should really be precise about what we mean by that. So while anything and everything can be a meeting, today we're mostly focusing on team meetings. By team meetings, we mean something like a meeting that happens mostly with colleagues that you work with closely on a more or less regular basis. So we can talk about brainstorming sessions, recurring team meetings, stand-ups, that sort of thing. Of course, it can also be different meetings with more or less participants. But just for the sake of knowing what we're talking about today, it is mostly going to be smaller-ish team meetings with, let's say, 3 to 100 participants. Nevertheless, many of the things that we are talking about today are actually useful for any kind of meeting. Okay, now, I think you all know this. I know this well enough. This is what our meetings look like and have been looking like for quite a while now. And yeah, you can see that people are there, but you don't really know what they're doing, right? And we already heard that in the poll before. You would like to keep people from multitasking, which is, I guess, something we're all guilty of. So let's see, let's have a moment of real time here. During a meeting, have you ever done any work-related tasks, stressed about losing valuable work time when the meeting was feeling really inefficient? Did you daydream? Did you lose track of what's being said? Or maybe you did all of them. I am definitely guilty of that. And as we can see, yep, so are most of you. Thank you so much for being open. Done other work-related tasks, definitely. 57%. Fantastic. Yes, we're all guilty of that, and actually it's normal. It's normal. And it's normal because we're human, but it's also normal because mostly meetings are not really organized in a way that makes them work perfectly, right? At least not perfect for us. Actually, we have asked this question, the same question, in a big research project that we did. Some of you might be familiar with it already. It was our 2021 trend report research when we asked 1,500 US office workers about the current state of meetings, how they find it, what they find lacking. And we saw the number 57 on the poll before, and actually here it is again, 57% of people multitask. And 53 worry about losing precious time that they need for other work-related things. 48% daydream, all of us did it. So yes, we are in good company, but that actually means that meetings are not really doing their job well. And something else doesn't really work well about meetings, which is the fact that they are not run in the best way. 54% of the participants in the research told us that they think their managers really need to get better at facilitating meetings. And this is a tricky one, because what do we mean by facilitation? What is a facilitator? Now, the first fundamental thing is actually a facilitator is not a presenter. So if a facilitator is not the presenter, and it doesn't even have to be your team leader or manager, what is a facilitator then? A facilitator is the person who designs the flow, enables a good conversation, a good, productive, efficient conversation, and makes sure that the meeting reaches its goals and objectives. So basically, the facilitator is responsible for the smooth flow and has every right to give opportunities or tasks to other people, and does not need to be the one who's solo presenting. And with that, we believe that good facilitation enables better meetings, and better meetings enable all of us to have a better workday. And this is what we want, right? Ultimately, we all want to have better meetings so we can get work done better and we enjoy it more. And with that, we are going to go into our first part, which is everything that should happen before a meeting. Zsofia, are we ready to tackle that?
Yes, thank you, Sabine. So one might think that when we talk about meeting facilitation, we talked about the time during the meeting, but preparation and time before the meeting is as important. So let's look at a few tips that will help you prepare a meeting that your participants will be actually looking forward to attending. But before we jump into that, I've got a quick question for you. And this is a tricky one, but I'm looking forward to your answers. So have you ever attended a meeting that could have been an email? And I can see yes is in the lead. We have a couple of no's as well, not yet. Probably you will, but okay. So yes, that's exactly what I was actually expecting. So Tip number 1, defining purpose of the meeting is really crucial. Meetings are here for collaboration and discussions. So meetings' purpose could be to make a decision, to solve a problem, or you can also generate some ideas with your team members and with your colleagues. So before even putting together the guest list, before thinking about the timing, you really have to ask yourself one single question. Why do you want to call a meeting? What do you want to do? Why do you want to actually bring people together to discuss something? And if you don't have a clear purpose and you feel like sending an email or Slack message or Microsoft Teams message could do the job, then definitely go for that. And also be very intentional about whom you're sending the invitation to, and always invite the right people. From the research that Sabine mentioned at the very beginning, we found out that 21% of people were not invited to relevant meetings. And I think this number is really alarming. So think about a topic and not only invite people from your team, but also invite people outside of your team who might actually help you with discussing the team that you're discussing. Right, so we know why we're doing the meeting, why we're organizing the meeting. We also know whom we want to invite, and now let's look at how we can actually do that. Ultimately, you want to prepare an interesting meeting, something that your participants will really be looking forward to attending and something they will enjoy. So here's the tip number 2, take the event marketing approach and treat your meeting as an event. And what do I mean by that? Many times the reputation of the meetings isn't really great, but you can change it right from the start of the meeting by making your guests curious. So for example, play around with a meeting title. So instead of calling it status meeting, call it big news. People will be curious. And also try to set it up at the odd hours. So instead of 11 a.m., go for 11:07. At 11:07. So again, it will give them some time to take a break, but also they'll be curious, why are we staring at the odd hour? Or you can just incorporate a team into your meeting. Right. When we talk about events, virtual events, hopefully soon to happen live events, there are many people involved, and the same should go also for the meeting. So be lazy. Make sure to give roles to your attendees and share responsibilities. Also appoint someone who could, for example, who could think about the icebreaker question at the very beginning of the meeting. So you're not just sharing your what did you do during the weekend, but you can also have someone who is keeping track on time, someone who is taking notes. So really give roles to your attendees. And last but not least, when talking about event-like experience, we really have to plan for engagement. And we're talking about the interaction that is planned in advance, so prepared in advance. For example, prepare your polls, prepare your Q&A. When do you want to run the Q&A? You want to do it in the middle of the meeting, or you want to leave it towards the end of the session. Also, create your feedback survey ahead. And if you're crowdsourcing ideas during the meeting, think about the way how you want to do that. So we managed to organize the whole meeting. We managed to prepare for the meeting, and now it's time to send the meeting invitation. So master your meeting communication and structure the meeting invitation in a way that is easy to follow. And let's have a look at the example that I prepared for you. So here's the team meeting invitation that I prepared. With my team, we want to discuss the team priorities for Q3. So that's the objective. So always include the objective, ideally at the very beginning of the invitation. Then we also have the agenda. So in this meeting, we have 3 discussion points. I'm also leaving some time for them to include, it's called, the section is called open mic, and they can suggest the topic, they can suggest the discussion times. It's not only me creating the agenda. And this is also really important to work on the agenda with your team. I also included the output. So what I want us to leave the meeting with. What do we want to achieve? And if we call the meeting successful and effective, this is what we should leave with. We want to have preliminary plan with projects for Q3. And last but not least, I also included a Slido link. So basically they're expected to submit their ideas in a poll, and that's happening before. So these are my expectations. We're also going to be using a new tool which is called Miro. So I'm sending them a link where they can get more information on the capabilities of the team. So if you have something like this that you can do before the meeting in an asynchronous way, it's great to do that, because then your time during the meeting is really reserved for the discussion and collaboration. And talking about the asynchronous communication, now Jacob will show you how you can really nicely use it in Slido.
Yes, exactly. I'll show you how to practically do this. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And you will see Slido's admin. So this is what Slido admin looks like for those of you who have not used Slido before. But let's say I'm having a meeting and I want to collect questions in the audience Q&A before my meeting, so I know what's important to people who are coming to my meeting. To do that, I'm going to hover over the share button and click on share link with participants. That will copy a link to my clipboard, and I can then paste it into an email, a Slack message, a Teams message, a Zoom chat, as we've been doing throughout this webinar, so on and so forth. So that can be super useful. You might also want to ask your participants or colleagues a poll before the meeting. So let's say I want to know how confident everyone is about my current project before we have the meeting about that project. I can click on these 3 vertical dots, click share, and then again, copy the direct link to my clipboard and then paste it into a meeting, a Slack channel, so on and so forth. So this is a very practical and easy way to get started with your meeting before the meeting even starts. So I hope that's helpful, and we will move on to the next session, and Sabina will tell you about what to do during your meeting.
Thank you, Jacob. All right. So here we are. We have mastered our preparation. We have seen how we can get the discussion flowing before the actual meeting starts. So that is a way how to nudge our participants to be a little bit more active already during, which helps us to save time. Now, why is that actually important to have a meeting run in a good way? It's mostly because when you think about it this way, we learned that 42% of people who have attended meetings did not really speak their mind. So they did not share their great ideas, they did not share their very valid concerns, or that they did not share any resources or anything that was possibly important for all of us, for the entire team, for the project. And this is actually not how we want those meetings to be. We definitely want your meetings to be more successful, and we want your meetings to be more inclusive and give everybody a chance to speak up. Now, how do we do that? We have prepared a few easy tips for you. So in order to engage your participants with purpose, please make sure that you re-engage and you encourage your attendees regularly to participate in the polls or in the questions that you ask. And by that, I do not mean the classroom situation where somebody gets just called randomly, because that is uncomfortable. We all know it. But please just, you can have a look at the Slido vote and be like, oh, okay, so I see that 5 people have voted, but we're 8 in the room, or we're 10 in the room, or 25. Maybe we can get a few more votes in, and just make sure that your participants know that you actually value their contribution. Also, please comment on poll results. Now imagine you're asking a super good question and then you don't comment on the poll results. You just let it sit there and die. That would be awkward. This is not something that's going to bring your presentation or your meeting forward either. So please, when you ask those questions, ask them with intention and introduce them, incorporate them into the discussion, use them to push the meeting forward and to spark a conversation. Also, to reiterate on what Zsofia mentioned, please be lazy. Don't think that as the meeting host, you have to do all the presenting and all the speaking. You're already doing so much, right? So make sure that you give the voice back to your participants. You ask a lot of questions, you delegate those decisions, and yeah, you give yourself some time to relax as well, because it's supposed to be a fun job, right? All right. Now that we talked about those engagement principles, we have prepared a few situations for you that will help you to reach your meeting objectives with the use of Slido. Number one would be, you want to create an inclusive atmosphere from the start, right? So you want to pull everybody in and give a good expectation setting of how the meeting is supposed to go. And what better way to do that than starting with a poll right from the beginning? So how about this one? You can engage directly and easy with a simple poll. We actually had this a few weeks ago in a meeting when we were asked, would you rather live in the Arctic or in the Sahara? And this is honestly such a weird question that it sparked a great casual discussion. We didn't have to go through this whole awkward, like, how was your week or how was your day? Because nobody really likes those questions, or at least most people don't. And instead of that, we had a fun, interesting question. We had a very heated discussion about it, you wouldn't believe. And then everybody was warmed up and ready to go. Plus, you can make the voices transparent with a poll of people who don't want to speak, but who still want to contribute. And you make it obvious that they are here, which is important for them. Secondly, if you don't want to start with a more fluffy or soft question, no problem. You can also ask a very work or topic related question, but ask for their opinions and then talk about the results. So for example, imagine you have a session that is about the target goals that you set with your team, and you want to make sure that people are confident. Ask them if they are confident. And if you see that they're not, open the space for their concerns. If you see that they are, have them share why, and then move into discussion with even more strength and happiness. All right, second situation. Your team needs to take a decision. We know that sometimes getting to a decision can be pretty lengthy. Let's call it that. When you just have a poll and you make the decision a vote, you can make the process very transparent. You can put all of the options on the table and just give people a choice. That way, it goes faster, it's final, and you can move on. So for that, we used, for example, a multiple choice poll. Very simple. Okay, next situation. You're introducing new information and you need to check for understanding and questions. So imagine there was a big all hands meeting before the new company strategy was introduced, and you need to check if people remembered the priorities or the key projects or any of the big news. When you try to put those things into a quiz instead of just having numbers on slides, it creates a little of a competitive element. It is way more fun to learn that information because it's more rewarding to have it ready. And it's just a fun element. So make learning interesting. And instead of just putting it on bland slides, do something with it. Numbers are very grateful to be used in any sort of poll or quiz type. And there's a classic here. So I'm pretty sure you have all been in those meetings where nobody prepared anything, which is fine, that happens. But then the situation gets heated, there is a lengthy debate, there seems to be no way out of it, and you would love to escape, but you don't know how, and a poll would be so good right now. We have a solution for that, and Jacob is going to show you how that works.
Yes, exactly. So even the best planned meeting might call for some improvisation. And if that happens, don't panic. So now you're seeing Slido's present mode. And one super neat thing that you can do in present mode is add a new poll on the fly. So in the bottom left corner here, you'll see this kind of toolbar, remote control, whatever you want to call it. We call it the manageable wall. And you can press this plus button to create a new poll. So let's say we're talking about the box of birds proposal and we're having one of these lengthy discussions, as Sabina mentioned earlier, and we need to get to a decision. So I'm going to make a poll on the fly, multiple choice. Should we proceed? Yes, no. And I launch the poll. And if people aren't already in the Slido event, they can use the QR code to join, or of course, go to slido.com and enter the event code. And they can vote, and we can proceed with our meeting with a clear yes or no decision. So rather than having a lengthier and lengthier and lengthier discussion, I see someone voted yes, that's great. We can move on. So speaking of moving on, let's move on with our presentation.
Yes. And by the way, just a reminder, because I saw some very nice questions in the Zoom chat, please, please, please put them into the Slido Q&A so that other people can upvote it and we can talk about it later in the Q&A part. We are not forgetting about you. Your questions have a time. All right. So talking about all of those situations, as I mentioned in the very beginning, we are just a few brains and we can't possibly anticipate everything that you would need. What we're offering for you right now in this poll is if there is any situation missing that you encounter in some of your meetings that you would like to have a solution from us right now, please just put it into the poll and we will make sure to include some sort of description or maybe some help in the output for you. So right now we're having effective feedback giving. That's a very good one. Recognition events, we love those in Slido. Corporate speed dating, peer learning, speeding up the presenter. Oh yeah, team building. Great. Fantastic. Yeah, so just keep posting. We appreciate your input and we will make sure to make something awesome with it in the follow-up email. And with that, we are moving on. So we have run our meeting. We're happy with it. How do we keep going, Zsofia?
Right, so once the meeting is over, there's still two things that should not be skipped in any case. So what is the first one? Yes, you're right. The first one is gather the feedback that matters. And we're not talking just about any feedback. We're talking about feedback that you can use for improving your facilitation skills, but also your content. So when talking about the facilitation skills, I've got a great example. Back then, when we were having things with my UK team, we were actually rotating on facilitating the meeting. And at the very end of the meeting, we were always asking for feedback. How did people like the meeting? If there was something that we could have done differently, did we include the right people or should we invite more people? So basically everything that is connected to your facilitation skills, ask your team and they can give you some great feedback, which is always a gift, right? But when talking about the content, also, you can incorporate some questions that will help you to create a content for your upcoming meeting. So for example, if there's something that you should continue the discussion about, just ask them and they can give you those discussion points and you can use it for your upcoming meeting. So again, here is the example. I prepared like a feedback survey for you. It will be in this slide. I guess saw the question in the chat whether we'll be sharing the presentation. We will be. So you can take this as an inspiration. There are a couple of questions as I mentioned, regarding to your facilitation skills and how to improve that, but also, did we actually need a meeting for the discussion, right? So this is the million-dollar question. So having the feedback from your team is always really valuable. And now over to Jacob, who will show you how to, again, do it in Slido.
Exactly. So creating a survey is pretty easy in Slido, and I'll show you how. So here we are back in Slido admin, and we want to create a quick and simple feedback poll. So let's make sure we're in the live poll section and click on create poll, select survey. And our feedback survey doesn't have to be super complex. It can be just a couple questions. Like, for instance, a rating poll asking, how was the meeting today? And let's give our colleagues a chance to let us know how to improve. So we can make an open text poll. How can we improve for the next meeting? And I can launch that poll if I'd like to. I don't have to necessarily. And this is also a great opportunity to use that direct link. So again, click share and copy the direct link, and you can post it into your Zoom chat during the meeting or to your output after the meeting, just to make sure that everybody participates and feels like they're included in the process of creating these recurring meetings. So super easy to do with Slido. And let's talk about that output. So let's go back to Sophie and she can tell us about the output.
Yes, exactly. So finally, it's time also, this is the end of our meeting. Also, when we're talking about the feedback, just a quick point. Ideally, you would run the feedback towards the end of your meeting, but if you're running over the time and you don't have a time, you can also send the link. So Finally, also make sure that your responsibilities and tasks have been clearly formulated and assigned. So the best way to do it is to send out an output that holds everyone accountable. And again, here is a quick example that I prepared, and I love this one. So our colleague Nadia posted this output to our team channel after the planning meeting we had. It's divided into different sections, and as you can see, there are clear action tasks and also the owner. So this really helped us to follow up on what needs to be done and what has been done. So this is, again, great example. You can post it in the email, or you choose Slack or Microsoft Teams or any other tool that you're using. And with that, I would love to learn. So think about all these tips that you just heard, and also think about your next meeting or next meetings in the future. Which of these tips will you try out next week or anytime when you're organizing a meeting? We would love to learn. What did you like? What was the main takeaway that you think could be really helpful? Okay, definitely better follow up. Starting with a poll. That's also great, especially when you're nervous. I remember we saw there was somewhere poll vote being nervous before the meeting. So if you're nervous, I think in my personal opinion, having the poll and commenting on the results makes it really, it eases the whole thing. Assign tasks to others, definitely. Sabine, what about you? What are you going to try at our next meeting?
Oh, I'm so guilty of the missing invitations and specifications and calendar invites when I invite people to meetings. And I'm just like, but I know what I'm doing, but that doesn't help, when nobody else knows it. So I solemnly swear to write better meeting invitations.
Great, noted. I'll hold you accountable. Perfect. So thank you so much. We've got great ideas. So really take this to your next meeting. Again, we'll be sharing the presentation, so we'll make sure to provide you with all those tips. We might even expand it since you provided us with a great ideas. So we'll expand it, and it will be for you for review.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. We're happy that you are already finding things that you can take into your work life from our webinar now. And the time has come to move into the question part. So now we are going to look at your specific questions. And I see right now, before we switch, for town hall event, a bit difficult. I totally get it. Town halls have their very own needs. By the way, in case you didn't know it, we have blog articles and I think even videos, but definitely blog articles in our Slido blog on how to run great town halls with also poll examples and everything. So maybe this would be a good inspiration for you. All right, let's do this. We are going to go into the Q&A. Just give me a second. Oops, that was not supposed to be here. Aha. So give me a moment so that I can administer your questions properly and my colleagues can get ready to answer your questions. So let's start with the upvoted one. What are the best ways to crowdsource questions before the meetings? Jofi, Jacob, whoever of you wants to take that, just start.
I think we can share what we're doing for our all hands meetings, but I think this applies to all the meetings that we run at Slido. One of our colleagues, they shared a link, I think a week before the all hands, and they're constantly reminding to submit questions and to upload questions. And I think that's the best strategy that works all the time. And usually we receive the biggest number of questions the day before or even during the meeting. So really just remind your team members to submit the questions, share it through all the channels. Share the link. Jacob showed you exactly the way how you can share the link, and just remind them, share, and make sure that they have all the information how to join the tool. I don't know if there's anything else, guys, from your experience, but I think this works great for us, especially.
Yeah, I think it works great for us, and I think don't be afraid to remind people Like at Slido, these reminders are coming out every day. Don't forget to submit your questions. Don't forget to upvote. Don't forget to submit your questions. Don't forget to upvote. Even during your presentations, remind your participants or your colleagues, join Slido, submit your questions, join Slido, submit your questions. Because it might take the 4th or 5th time for someone to actually be like, oh, I can go to Slido and submit my question. So don't be afraid of those reminders. Yeah.
I think that's a good call. Don't be afraid of those reminders. Spam your colleagues. Remind.
We've all got a lot of communication going on, so we all need some reminders sometimes. It's just human.
All right. That is the perfect bridge to the next question about being human. How do you make people feel seen, heard, and loved? Which is important, especially in times like these. Any idea?
I think we're talking about the remote environment here, I suppose. What I like, one tip, if you feel that you have someone on the call who hasn't spoken up for a time and you haven't heard from that person, maybe the person is shy to speak up, make sure to address and ask that person specifically. So in this case, I would address like, oh, Sabine, what do you think about it? Or Jacob, you got any comments, any ideas? So, but also Slido can really help you with this. Sometimes people don't feel comfortable speaking up and being heard, but Slido gives them the chance to express their opinions and their comments. So, but when we talk about the remote environment, this is probably a tip from me. Anything else, guys, that you would add? Sabine, would you add something?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think the open text poll and the word cloud poll are really useful. People can literally see their opinions being like recognized on the screen and you can comment on them. I would also say don't be afraid of silence at your meetings. If you just keep talking and talking and talking, those shy people who might be nervous to speak will continue to be shy and nervous to speak. So if there is a silence, it's not awkward. We're all in this weird online universe with each other. Just let it happen and someone will hopefully speak up. So.
But something, sorry, just one tip, something I have to really mention here is the silent hero use case that we're also doing during the all hands. And it's great. You can also do it during the team meeting. And I remember we've done it many times. Basically how it works is that you have as far as I remember, it's a survey. There are 2 questions like, who is the silent hero for you for any period of time of this month or of this week, for example, and also submit why. It's a word cloud, so you can, show it on the screen. It's super nice, and that person actually, get some recognition, and it's, they're seen even though it's not verbal. But this is super nice way how you can make them laugh as well.
I love that example. In general, don't be scared to also ask people how they feel. Word clouds are perfect for that. And it's okay to be human. So don't forget about that human element. All right. I would like to have a super small tech block, which is mostly for Jacob. Those are just a few very simple questions. So number 1 would be, can you point me to tech help or on integrating Slido in PowerPoint?
Yes, I can. The best way to find any help with using Slido is to go to our help community. So it's community.slido.com. I'm going to paste that link into our Zoom chat here. And once you're there, we do have a couple articles about using PowerPoint and making sure everything works well. And I will post one right into this chat for you here, just so you have it and don't have to search for it on your own.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yes.
The next question is also PowerPoint related. I can answer that one. Now, where did it go? Yes, there
was it that second one there? Oh, there it is. Okay.
This one. So this person asks if we are using the PowerPoint integration right now and what's the best way to integrate Slido and Zoom. I think the Slido Zoom thing, I will leave that to you, Jacob, but just so you know what we're using right now. Whoa, what's going on? We are using the Google Slides integration actually, which works exactly like the PowerPoint situation. integration. They are very similar, and they allow us to put our interaction slides, so the Slido polls, directly into our regular slides and create this nice flow that you have all been experiencing for now. And now maybe a quick word about the Zoom integration, Jacob.
Yes. So right now, what we're doing, as Sabina just said, is sharing our screens onto Slido's present mode or onto the Google Slides integration. And I'm also going to paste a community article into the chat again about using Slido remotely with some tips to how best to do that. As far as a direct integration with Zoom, that is something that we hope to have by the end of this year. So you can look forward to using Slido directly in your Zoom meetings sometime in 2021 as our hope. So.
Yes.
Sabine, just a quick, I'll just quickly jump in since there is a chat, there is a message in chat I would like to address to clarify on the silent hero idea. There's a question whether you ask the meeting attendees, who is your silent hero in the meeting? Basically, the way how we're using it, we're supposed to submit silent heroes that we work with. Right, so for that specific period of time, for example, at the end of March, during the all hands, we're doing this a silent hero, and who was your silent hero of this month, right? So ideally, you're talking about people who you work with and who are on your team, so you've got some working experience, but it doesn't have to be only from your team, for example. So if you're doing company-wide meeting. If that makes sense, just let us know in the comments whether it makes sense. We can also share maybe an article. I'm sure we do have a blog post article on the silent hero use case.
I think so. So I think that our colleagues will take care of the silent hero example. We will post it in the chat. And if we don't make it in the chat, we will definitely include at least a screenshot and a link in the output. For now, let's go back to the current most upvoted questions, which is one that I really like. Could you share some lessons learned? So common mistakes to avoid when using Slido. I think we all have plenty of that, but maybe Jacob, how about you start?
My number one thing is if you're using Slido and you just want to ask some polls and you forget to turn off the Q&A feature, you might get people answering the polls in the Q&A or things like that. So part of being intentional about your meeting and setting things up beforehand might be to think about which Slido features you want to use and turning off the ones you don't want to use. So that's one super helpful tip, I think, to streamline how things are going to go. Another common mistake is to not let people know how to join or use Slido. So I work, as we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, in customer education and customer care. And a very common thing that happens is that people, when I'm working on chats, for instance, is that people are typing their questions that they mean to type for a Slido event into the chat, or they can't figure out how to get there, or they're just lost. So it's super important to make sure everyone knows how to get into the Slido event. They know what Slido is. They know what's going to happen when they get into Slido, so on and so forth. So I think those would be the two most common mistakes that I see on customer education and customer care. Yeah.
For me, I can also mention two. For me, one is really specific. When you want to share Slido, when you want to present questions or polls on the screen, sometimes we see that people are showing the admin view, the admin mode. So try to avoid it and show the present mode, exactly what you're seeing right now on the screen. And the second one would be around many times you want to add some engagement elements, but to really engage your participants, it doesn't have to be complicated. So my tip would be like, do not overcomplicate things. It's fine to use 1, 2, 3 polls, like it depends on the length of your meeting, but really start with something simple, with something easy that you are also comfortable with using and doing. And then you can add, and you can, now become more advanced user of Slido, but for the very beginning, start with something simple.
Yeah. Definitely simple, and I would go like even more basic than that. I think the most common mistake to avoid using Slido is not playing around with the features. We have so many people who are not aware of what Slido can do, which is understandable because Slido can do a lot. And then they have a specific situation and they think Slido can't help them. And it creates a lot of frustration, and that is unnecessary, because for most things there are actually solutions. And if you really need some help or you need some inspiration, we have the blog, we have videos, and we have our amazing colleagues in customer care who can also help if something happens. So don't be shy to ask, but also don't be shy to play.
Oh, I need to highlight that because I think it's really common mistake that people actually, but I totally understand that sometimes you don't really know where to find those resources, but we've got so much great content. Check our blog posts, videos, as Sabina mentioned. There will include those links. I saw a comment in the chat whether we could include those links. We'll definitely do, but really check the blog posts. Like, our colleagues are doing an incredible job with putting all the content together.
Definitely. All right. There was a question about introverts. So how do you energize shy or introverted people at the beginning of a meeting? And how do you involve them at the beginning, but you don't push them, so you don't put anybody on display? Do you have any ideas for that? It's a bit tough.
That's a bit tough. Jacob, you want to start?
I mean, I think this is, again, not just talk about the open poll, open text, and word cloud over and over again, but I think these are great ways to get shy or introverted people into your meeting right at the beginning, because they don't have to unmute, they don't have to speak out loud, they just have to answer a question. And even if you're using a word cloud, entries that have already been made will be suggested to other participants. So they don't necessarily even have to type out in full what they want to say. But once they submit something, they'll see it on the screen, or they'll see the effect on the screen, and they'll be like, oh, I am kind of part of this meeting. So that might get people involved just at the kind of rip off the Band-Aid, I guess. And you can talk about things that are on the open text and on the word cloud without directly mentioning anyone. And you can say, for example, actually, like I did at the beginning of this webinar, I was interested with someone who submitted that they are nervous about meetings. And I kind of made a leading question, like, I wonder what that means exactly, being nervous about the meeting. And that gives the person an opportunity to answer and say, oh, well, I was talking about this, this, or that. So that might be a way to get people kind of involved if they want to get involved.
And also, Sabina mentioned the quiz functionality for reviewing numbers with your team and going through something new. But actually, you can really nicely use quiz also at the very beginning in a funny way to energize people. We love music quizzes, for example. We're doing it, I think, monthly, right? And that's a great way how to energize introverted and also shy people, because you're playing the music, they're voting, it's all in a very playful environment, which is perfect. So I would definitely go for quizzes.
I think it is also okay to accept that, especially if you haven't used polls already a lot and it's not a staple in your meeting household, so to speak, it's okay to give people time to get acquainted with the tool, to get used to it, to get comfortable with it. There is probably no need to push everybody for perfect attendance from the very beginning. We're not in class. So I think it's okay to sometimes cut us a little bit of slack, especially when it's about speaking out. And then remember, again, the great thing about polls is that people don't have to speak actually. So that might already be very helpful. All right. Now this is probably also a more techish question. So where do you suggest people to add their comments rather than a question? And we do have a feature for that. And maybe Jacob, you would like to explain.
Yes, there's actually a number of answers to this question. So as Sabina said, Slido can do a whole lot of things, and it's fun to play around with the different options. So the first way that you can suggest people to just add their comments would be through an open text poll, like I showed you how to make during this webinar, excuse me. Just create a poll, create an open text, and add your comments as the question. Another idea would be to turn on the ideas feature. So that's automatically deactivated when you create a Slido event. You'll have to go into your event settings, click on the Features tab and toggle on Ideas. And once you do that, you can create a topic and people can comment on that topic in the same way that they would submit questions to the audience Q&A. And other people can even upvote those comments on the topic. So that can be another super helpful way to gather comments instead of questions necessarily. So those are two ways of doing it. And if you play around with Slido, you might find even more. So go ahead and get into the admin and see what you can do.
So I just wanted to take the opportunity to show how to turn on and off things. So if I'm not mistaken, you can see my Slido admin right now.
Yes, that is correct.
Perfection. Okay, so whenever we talk about turning on and off a feature, like for example, if you want to not have Q&A in there, or you only want to have Q&A and you don't want to have the polls, or the infamous ideas feature that Jacob just talked about, you basically, wait, that was very fast. So you click on settings, which is here on the right, and then you click on features, which is here. And this gives you the option to turn on and off whatever you need. And also for the Q&A, you are actually able to allow replies. So this is also a way how you can get that conversation started when you don't want to use the ideas feature, for example, which looks a little bit different, and you just want to make use of the Q&A feature. Maybe people already know it, it's easier. You can allow replies, and then people can have actually conversations under those questions. So there's a whole lot of stuff that can be done. All right, give me a second to pivot back to my other screen. Here we are. And maybe we can already start answering this question. So we are done here and up here. This is actually a very important one. So do we have tips to help others understand when a meeting is not needed? Knowing when and when not is important. Maybe I can share one little anecdote from a situation that I had with my team lead a few weeks ago. I was really stressed out and there was a spontaneous meeting called in that week, and I actually did not have any capacity for that. And it required all of us to prepare something because, you know, shared responsibilities, no solo presenter, everybody was supposed to provide a part. I was very stressed about it. I did provide my part. I hated the way that I had to do it and my whole week and everything. And then after that, I got to talk to my team leader in the one-on-one, and I just asked him, hey, was it necessary to have that meeting in that particular week on that particular day? Because I had a lot going on and I would have been so happy to have it in the upcoming week. And he said, no, actually, no, you could have just said that. And that for me was like mind blowing. I was like, wow, okay, I could have said that. I was not aware. So I think my first tip would be to explain your situation, explain why you think that maybe a different way of communication or a different date for the meeting would be more suitable, and just give it as a suggestion. And maybe you will get a more positive answer than you were expecting. So how about you? Do you have, Jacob and Sophia, do you have more suggestions on how to solve this?
Right. So I guess for me, from my opinion, like what works is to really understand if you only need to share some information. For example, it's a slide deck and you're just going slide by slide and you're just sharing what is already written on the slide deck. Probably in that case, the meeting really isn't important and isn't needed. But if you want to, you know, gather some feedback, for example, or if you want to review that, if you want to make some changes, if you want to make some decisions like about the whole situation, and it involves the discussion part, then definitely go for it. And I love the way how we're doing, for example, brainstorming. We had one today. Our team lead sent us Slido links to Slido event. Basically, we put all the ideas into there, and then we uploaded during the meeting. We uploaded those we think that would make more sense and they're really crucial, and then we discussed those. So whoever submitted their idea had some time to elaborate on that idea. We had a discussion, and then we, you know, basically we agreed, like, does this make sense to do actually? Is this the right thing to do? So, but we had a discussion. So that's great that we didn't spend the time only submitting those ideas, because that would have been unnecessary, I think. So really I think it's about thinking ahead and thinking about the outcome, like what should be the outcome of the meeting. And if it's only to inform your colleagues, probably not really necessary to organize one. But if it's to get their opinion and discuss, then definitely go for it. I know, Jacob, do you have any other tip?
Yeah, I had a situation a few months ago, actually, where a meeting wasn't necessary, and I kind of knew it, and the other person wasn't so sure. And what I ended up doing was saying very clearly what I wanted to cover in the meeting, and just suggest that maybe we could take care of it via our messaging system, right? So I think making it clear what the goal is can make it clear to the other person, oh, we don't actually need to like schedule a meeting, go to a meeting, invite people to a meeting, blah, blah, blah. If the goal is just this one thing or these two things that we can discuss over a chat. So yeah, I think keeping in mind the goal of the meeting is very helpful, not only with this, but also in the other question I see there about the flexible agenda. Like keep in mind what the goal is and how you can best meet it. And maybe the best way to meet that goal is not going to be a meeting. And then if you're having this kind of like flexi time, if you're bending and bending and bending and like in side chat and side chat and side chat, keep in mind what the goal of the meeting is. And if you can still accomplish that goal. And if the answer is no, switch it back to the actual meeting and, you know, get back to the point. So.
Thank you. This is actually a perfect point. So we have 3 minutes left and we still want to give you the feedback survey. So we are going to take 2 more questions. I would like to give a facilitator's point of view for the flexible agenda thing. I know that it can drive people crazy when there are side conversations and outbursts going on, like talking about this and talking about that. What I like to do is to reserve a space for those. I think mostly people do understand when you tell them that there is not enough time, but they are scared that the topic will never come up again. So you need an opportunity to collect them somewhere. You could do that with an open text poll. You could do that also with the feedback poll. You could be like, so what should we talk about next time? Or you could just make a list, put it into the meeting output, and actually set aside time for those topics to be discussed again. You can have them upvoted, and by that, make sure that you are actually tackling things which interest everybody. And for other things that need to be discussed, maybe in a one-on-one or via email or something, you can also talk about it, but make sure to give people that security that they know you will not forget. It's not gonna just fall off the table and then be gone. That always helps me. And the last question would be, I had it here. Somebody asked about how to create inclusive meetings. Here it is. So scaling globally is very important for many of us who are working in bigger corporations or have cross-continental teams, even like we. So I'm in Germany, Jacob is in Mexico, Zofia is in Bratislava, in Slovakia. It is very important to provide more inclusive meeting experiences. And for that, I wanted to show you something. We are going to have a webinar dedicated for that purpose. And we are going to talk about the essentials of running successful hybrid meetings. So we are going to give tips on how to run those hybrid meetings and to really create that inclusive environment. You can find it on our website. We are going to post the link in the chat and also include it in the follow-up email. You can sign up here. We have 2 time slots available. And that is a great way on how you can educate yourself and then bring that education into your team on creating better experiences. And it's 7, so I guess that is what we have for you today. Just give me one moment to get back. Yes. Thank you so much for all of your questions. We're very sorry that we couldn't answer all of them. We are going to try to include a few of the upvoted ones into the output email and give you more information on that. We are also going to include more resources and everything that you need and that you requested into the output email. And yeah, before we go into the feedback, thank you to Jacob and Sophia for supporting me today and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was fun.
I'm glad. Okay, now I understand that it is in Germany, it's 7 right now. For everybody else, it's 60 minutes past. So before you get into your evening or your day, please give us some feedback. We have prepared a feedback poll for you. We are going to keep it open also later. So you will be able to give us the feedback also maybe in 10 minutes or half an hour when you're ready. But we really appreciate that you joined us today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for more webinars, and if you need us, if you need inspiration, go to our blog, go to our YouTube channel, check out the community center that Jacob mentioned, and yeah, we are wishing you a nice evening or day, depending on where you are.
Yeah, thank you for being here, everyone. We really appreciate it.